The envelope on Amara Okoye's desk contained enough money to erase 6 months of rent. It could replace every broken mirror in her studio and still leave her with more than she had ever saved. Renji Kurose expected her to open it, negotiate, or thank him. Instead, she slid it back across the desk without touching the seal. Then she looked past him at the women waiting outside and said, "You can own this building tomorrow. Tonight, I still have a class." Renji did not move. Amara stood behind the reception counter of Rise Movement Studio, one hand resting beside the unopened envelope. She wore black training pants and a loose, burnt orange top. Her white sneakers were worn gray at the edges. Her body was full and heavy through the hips and waist. There was nothing apologetic in the way she stood. Renji had been told to expect something else. A difficult tenant. A foreign woman refusing redevelopment because she believed the Kurose property group would eventually increase its offer. Masato Ishida had summarized the situation in 3 sentences. Tenant unwilling to vacate, demands unreasonable compensation. Recommend immediate settlement before construction schedule is affected. Renji had dealt with people like that before. He usually sent lawyers. Today, he had come himself. The redevelopment covered nearly an entire block, and this narrow second-floor studio was the only remaining obstacle. He looked at the envelope. "You haven't seen the amount." "I saw your name on it." "That tells you the amount?" "It tells me why it's here." Her answer was calm enough to irritate him. Through the glass wall beside the reception desk, 8 women waited in the studio. Different ages, different bodies. One woman stretched near the mirrored wall. Another was laughing while adjusting the straps of her shoes. A tall woman in office clothes stood by the door, holding a bottle of water. Amara glanced at the clock. Class starts in 2 minutes. Renji looked around the room. The flooring was old. One mirror had a crack running through the lower corner. A speaker near the back wall was held together with black tape. "This place is finished." "Not tonight. The building has been sold." "I know. You were offered compensation." "I was offered something I didn't ask for." Renji studied her. "What did you ask for?" "To finish my lease." "That's all?" "That's all." He did not answer immediately. Amara picked up the envelope and held it toward him. He took it. No hesitation, no counteroffer, no request for a better number. Behind her, someone tapped lightly on the studio door. Amara looked over. 1 minute. Renji slipped the envelope inside his coat. "You understand that staying here will not stop the redevelopment." "I understand contracts." "You think a lease protects you from everything?" "No." She met his eyes. "But it protects me from pretending I agreed to leave when I didn't." That was the first thing she said that changed the conversation, not because it threatened him, because it contradicted the report sitting on his desk. Renji looked toward the studio again. "You have a class." "Yes." "And you expect me to leave?" "I expect you not to stand in the middle of the floor while people are trying to dance." For a second, neither spoke. Then Renji stepped aside. Amara opened the door. The women entered fully, filling the room with movement and voices. No one knew who he was. Or if they did, they had the sense not to show it. Amara moved to the front. "Phones away, shoes tied. We start from the shoulders today." Music came through the damaged speakers. Renji should have left. Instead, he remained near the hallway, outside the glass wall. At first, he watched because he wanted to understand what kind of business could make someone reject that much money. Then he stopped thinking about the money. Amara did not teach like someone performing confidence. She corrected posture without embarrassing anyone. She moved easily, but did not demand that the women copy her body exactly. When one woman stopped halfway through a sequence and shook her head, Amara walked over. "Pain?" "Embarrassment." Amara gave her a towel. "Different problem." The woman laughed. So what do I do? Stay until you stop caring who's watching. Her eyes passed briefly toward the hallway, toward Renji. He almost smiled. Almost. 30 minutes later, a younger woman arrived late. She whispered something to Amara at the door. Amara listened. Then she nodded and let her inside without asking for payment. Renji noticed. He noticed everything. The cracked mirror, the taped speaker, the handwritten schedule, the old brass key hanging from a red cord beside the reception desk, and the fact that Amara had just turned down enough money to leave this place comfortably while quietly allowing someone else to enter without paying. That did not fit Masato's description. When the class ended, the women gathered their bags. One stopped beside Amara. Same time Thursday? Same time. Another hugged her briefly before leaving. Renji waited until the hallway emptied. Amara wiped the floor near the mirrors. You're still here. You waive fees. She looked at him. That isn't your business. You refused a settlement. Yes. You're behind on repairs. I noticed. And you still let people come here without paying. Amara leaned the mop against the wall. I decide what my work is worth. Renji looked at her for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been bothering him since she returned the envelope. How much did you demand from my company? I already answered you. Answer again. Nothing. He took out his phone. Amara folded her arms. Calling someone. My office. For what? To postpone the eviction. She did not thank him. That surprised him more than the refusal. Instead, she asked, How long? Until I understand why I was told you wanted more money. Amara's expression changed slightly. Not gratitude, attention. So, you didn't read the original lease. I read a summary. That was your mistake. Renji accepted the hit. Yes. He made the call. It lasted less than a minute. No threats. No raised voice. When it ended, he slipped the phone back into his pocket. The notice is suspended. For now. For now. Amara nodded once. That's enough. Renji started toward the door. His eyes stopped on the brass key hanging beside the desk. Who has access to this place? Me. Building management should have a copy. They do. That one? No. She picked up the brass key. She closed her fingers around it. This one is mine. Renji left without asking again. An hour later, he was in the back seat of a black sedan crossing central Tokyo when Masato finally answered his call. I need Okoye's original tenant file. A pause. How quickly? Now. Another pause. Longer this time. Renji looked out the window. Masato. Yes? Why are you hesitating? The silence on the line lasted just long enough to become an answer. Masato sent the file 11 minutes later. Renji opened it on his tablet. He read it before the car reached his residence. The first page was ordinary. Tenant name, lease term, monthly rent, permitted use. Rise Movement Studio, Amara Okoye. The next pages contained correspondence between the property office and the tenants affected by redevelopment. He read every line. Amara had never requested additional compensation. She had asked for one thing repeatedly, written confirmation that her lease would be honored through its existing end date. Masato's summary had turned that into a demand for more money. Renji called him again. You read the original file? Yes. And you still wrote that she wanted a larger settlement. Masato took a second before answering. She was delaying the project. That wasn't my question. No, she didn't ask for more money. Renji looked at the city moving beyond the tinted window. Why change it? I simplified the problem. Renji ended the call. The answer bothered him more than any lie. Masato had not sounded guilty. He had sounded practical. 2 days later, Amara heard a knock on the studio door, 15 minutes before the first morning class. She expected a student. Renji stood outside holding a folder. No entourage, no envelope. She unlocked the door and stayed half in, half out. What now? The original tenant file. I know what mine says. I didn't. That sounds like a problem between you and your employees. It is. She waited. Renji held out the folder. She took it. Inside was a copy of the original correspondence. There was also a second document confirming the eviction suspension in writing. Amara read the first page, then the second. You put your name on this. Yes. So if someone changes their mind tomorrow, they answer to me. She looked up. That's not the same as answering to the lease? No. At least he did not pretend otherwise. Amara stepped aside. You can come in for 5 minutes. Renji entered. He noticed the brass key in her hand before she slipped it into the pocket of her training jacket. You still don't trust me. I met you 3 days ago. Fair. That answer caught her off guard. Most men his rank didn't take no for an answer. Her former husband had treated every disagreement as disrespect. Renji did not look pleased. He did not punish her for saying no. That mattered more than she wanted it to. She placed the folder on the reception desk. Why did you come yourself? To tell you I was wrong. Amara looked at him carefully. You could have sent an email. I could have. Then why didn't you? Renji glanced through the glass toward the empty dance floor. Because I made the decision in person. It was not an apology, but it was close enough to one that she recognized the effort. A maintenance worker arrived 20 minutes later to inspect a leaking pipe near the back wall. Amara turned immediately toward Renji. You sent him? I noticed the water stain last time. You said the eviction was suspended. It is. That doesn't make this your studio. The building is still mine. And that is exactly your problem. The maintenance worker stopped near the doorway, uncertain whether to continue. Renji looked at him. Wait outside. The man left. Amara folded her arms. You see something broken and decide what happens next. It needs repair. I know. You were going to leave it? I was waiting until Friday because I can pay him Friday. I can pay him now. That isn't the point. To you. To anyone who has ever had someone solve their life for them and then remind them who paid. Renji said nothing. Amara moved toward the damaged wall and touched the edge of the stain. My ex-husband used to buy me clothes. Renji did not interrupt. Not because I needed them, because he wanted me dressed differently. He called it helping. She stepped back. After a while, every favor had instructions attached. Renji looked at the worker waiting beyond the glass. Then he walked to the door. Come back Friday, he told the man. The worker hesitated. Sir? She'll arrange payment. The man nodded and left. Renji returned to the reception desk. Amara had expected resistance. Instead, he picked up the folder he had brought. He placed it beside her ledger. You were right. About the wall? About me deciding. She studied him. For the first time, she did not see the man who had come with an envelope. She did not see someone who assumed she had a price. She saw someone capable of stopping himself after being told no. It was a small thing. Small things had become important to her. The first class arrived early. Renji moved toward the exit. Amara stopped him. Coffee? He looked back. There's a machine downstairs. That wasn't what I asked. 5 minutes later, they stood beside the reception counter, drinking terrible instant coffee from paper cups. Women changed shoes around them. Renji drank his without complaint. Amara noticed. You hate this. Yes. Then why are you drinking it? You offered it. She laughed before she could stop herself. It was the first time he had heard her laugh when it was not directed at a student. He looked down at the paper cup. Your classes always this busy? Not always. You could charge more. I could. But you don't. Some women come here because every other place makes them feel they have to be someone else before they can belong. Renji glanced toward the mirrors. You understand that feeling? Amara met his eyes. Yes. She did not explain further. He did not ask. That restraint earned him more than a question would have. Before leaving, Renji stopped beside the reception desk. His attention went to the brass key again. Building management still needs emergency access. They already have it. But not that key. No. What's different about it? Amara took it from her pocket. The brass was worn smooth near the teeth. This was the first key I paid for myself after my divorce. Renji looked at it, then at her. He understood why she would not hand it over. I won't ask again. This time she believed him. That evening, Renji returned to his office and reopened Amara's file. Masato was waiting. You're spending a lot of time on one tenant. I'm correcting your mistake. I was protecting the schedule. You altered the truth to make your recommendation easier. Masato remained calm. The project is worth more than that building. Renji closed the file. That doesn't make her disposable. Masato's expression changed for the first time. Not much. Enough. Renji saw it, and across the city, Amara locked the studio after her final class, unaware that the man who had first come to remove her had just defended her inside a room where her name should never have mattered at all. The photograph appeared on a Monday morning. Amara saw it before Renji did. Someone had taken it from across the street 3 nights earlier, just after the final class. Renji was standing outside the studio door while Amara locked up, his coat open, his face turned toward her. The angle made the moment look more intimate than it had been. By 8 o'clock, the image was circulating through local entertainment accounts. By 9, someone had identified Renji Kurose. The comments changed immediately. Why is a man like him visiting a dance studio? Who owns the building? Maybe that explains why she hasn't been evicted. Amara put her phone face down. Her first class started at 10. 7 women arrived instead of 12. One apologized before speaking. My husband saw the picture. Amara waited. He thinks this place is connected to people. You mean Renji? The woman looked uncomfortable. Yes. He doesn't finance the studio. I believe you. But belief was not the problem. By noon, a wellness company that had been discussing a partnership sent Amara a short email postponing negotiations. Another sponsor stopped answering. Nothing had technically collapsed. That almost made it worse. Reputation did not always break loudly. Sometimes it simply stopped returning calls. Renji arrived shortly after 3. Amara was replacing tape around the damaged speaker. You've seen it. She did not look up. Yes. I can have it removed. That made her stop. How? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Renji stood several feet away, leaving the distance she had taught him to respect. The accounts posting it can be persuaded. Persuaded how? He did not answer. Amara gave a short laugh without humor. That's what I thought. It would stop spreading. And tomorrow, someone says the story disappeared because the Yakuza boss in the photograph made it disappear. Renji knew she was right. He'd spent his adult life fixing things by making them disappear. A debt vanished. A witness changed his mind. A contract stopped existing. A door opened because someone understood who was standing behind it. Amara lived in a world where every favor left fingerprints. My associates are asking questions too, he said. About me. About the project. She stepped back to the speaker. Because you delayed it. Yes. So this is costing you. That isn't your concern. She looked at him. You don't get to decide what concerns me either. Renji let the correction stand. That afternoon, he received 3 calls from men whose money was tied to the redevelopment. None threatened him. They asked why construction had stopped. They asked why one tenant remained. One asked whether the photograph meant Renji had developed a personal interest in the property. Renji ended that call first. By evening, he had made a decision. It was the wrong one. He returned to the studio carrying no envelope this time. Instead, he placed a printed property listing on Amara's desk. She looked down. A larger studio, new floors, proper mirrors, a better district. What is this? A solution. Her expression closed. Renji continued before she could interrupt. The lease can be placed in your name. 3 years prepaid. No connection to Kurose property after transfer. No. You haven't read it. I don't need to. It removes you from the redevelopment. It removes me. That is the point. No, Renji. That is your point. He stopped. Amara pushed the listing back. You think, because this building is becoming difficult, I should disappear somewhere more convenient. I think you deserve better than a leaking studio. And who decides what better looks like? He had no answer she would accept. Amara walked toward the windows overlooking the street. My ex-husband used to do this. Renji remained where he was. He would buy me dresses and say he wanted me to feel beautiful. Then I noticed every dress was darker, looser, quieter than what I chose for myself. She folded her arms. He suggested restaurants where nobody knew us, vacations outside the city. He called all of it consideration. Renji understood before she finished. He was embarrassed by you. He was embarrassed by what people thought when they saw me beside him. Amara turned, and every time he decided something for me, he called it love. Renji looked at the property listing. For the first time, the offer felt different in his own hands. Not generous, not protective, familiar. I'm not him. No? Her answer came quickly. That's why I'm telling you before you become like him. The word stayed between them. Renji picked up the listing and tore it once through the middle. Amara watched him drop the pieces into the bin. I won't offer again. You'll want to. Yes. That surprised a small smile out of her. At least you're honest. He glanced toward the red cord beside the desk. The old brass key was hanging there. You said that key was the first thing you paid for after your divorce. Yes. What did it open before this studio? Nothing. He looked at her. Amara touched the worn brass. I bought it when the locksmith changed the lock. It was the first door in Korea. Nobody else could tell me I had to leave. Renji understood why she guarded it now, not because it was valuable, because once, having a key had meant having somewhere that belonged to her decisions. He stepped back from the desk. I'll speak to Masato tomorrow. About the redevelopment? About all of it. Amara nodded. It was not trust, but she believed he would do what he said. That night, Renji returned to his office. Masato waited beside the conference table. A redevelopment authorization lay open between them. Renji recognized the document immediately. He had not approved it. What is this? Masato did not sit. The investors required certainty. You moved forward without me. I protected an agreement worth more than one tenant. Renji picked up the document. At the bottom was a construction timetable. Site preparation began in 5 days. The first building scheduled for clearance was Amara's. Renji looked at Masato. Cancel it. Masato held his ground. I can't. Renji's attention returned to the authorization. For weeks, he had believed the problem was whether Amara could remain in his building. Now the question was whether his own authority still meant enough to let her choose for herself. Renji did not answer Masato immediately. He read the authorization again. The agreement let construction start once every affected tenant had accepted compensation or been recorded as refusing a reasonable offer. Beside Amara's name was the same phrase Masato had used from the beginning. Tenant rejected settlement offer and demanded additional compensation. Renji closed the document. You used the report. Masato did not deny it. It was already in the file. You wrote the file. I documented the situation in the form investors needed. You documented something that never happened. Masato gave no reaction. She was going to delay us either way. That sentence clarified everything. There was no hidden takeover, no rival paying Masato, no secret plan against Renji. Masato had simply decided Amara's version of the truth didn't matter because she had less sway than everyone else at the table. Renji had believed him because until he met Amara, he would probably have reached the same conclusion. Get out. Masato frowned. You're throwing away a major redevelopment over one tenant. No, I'm deciding who is allowed to speak for me. Masato left without another word. Renji called Amara. She answered after the fourth ring. What happened? How do you know something happened? You don't call me at midnight. He looked again at the construction schedule. Masato filed the redevelopment using the false tenant report. Silence. Then Amara asked, Does that mean they can clear the studio? In 5 days. Can you stop it? Yes. Her next question came immediately. How? Renji knew what she was asking, not whether he had enough power. What using that power would cost her. I can overrule the agreement, transfer the property, or remove your unit from redevelopment. No. He had expected it. You haven't heard the options. I heard enough. Amara, if you give me the studio, everyone who said I survived because of you becomes right. That doesn't make the accusation true. It makes it impossible to prove wrong. Renji leaned back in his chair. What do you want? It was the first time he had asked that question before offering a solution. I want the original lease. Every payment record, every written notice they sent me. And the report Masato filed. Renji looked toward the locked cabinet containing internal documents. That report is company property. So is the lie. He almost smiled. Almost. I'll send what I legally can. And the rest, I'll deal with. No disappearing documents. I know. By morning, Amara had turned the small reception desk into a work table. Lease copies, bank transfers, emails, attendance records, signed agreements with instructors, messages from students who had paid for future classes. She was not a lawyer. She understood her business because she'd built it herself, without anyone protecting her from her mistakes. The redevelopment paperwork claimed she had rejected a settlement. It said so before any formal offer was delivered. She checked the dates twice. Then a third time. That was enough. When Renji arrived, she had marked the discrepancy with a red pen. This date. He leaned over the desk. What about it? They reported me as refusing compensation 3 days before I received the offer. Renji read the line. The entire authorization depended on the claim that negotiations with every tenant had been completed properly. Amara tapped the paper. They didn't just describe me badly. They used that description to move the process forward. Renji understood the significance immediately. The same lie that had brought him into her studio was now the weakness inside the redevelopment itself. What do you need from me? He asked. Nothing you can't put your real name on. That afternoon, Amara contacted every instructor, student, and local partner, willing to confirm that the studio remained active and that prepaid classes extended beyond the proposed clearance date. She gathered statements. She organized payment records. She sent a formal challenge against the eviction timeline using the documentation already in her possession. No favors, no threats, no underworld connection. Renji fought on a different front. The redevelopment investors met in a private conference room that evening. Masato was there. So were the men who had spent the previous week asking whether Renji had lost control of his own project. Renji placed the altered tenant summary in the center of the table. This document is false. One investor looked toward Masato. Masato spoke first. It was an administrative simplification. Renji turned to him. No, it was a lie made convenient by the fact that the person it hurt had no seat in this room. Nobody answered. Renji continued. Kurose property is withdrawing from the redevelopment. The reaction was immediate. A contract was pushed toward him. You know the penalty. Yes. You'll lose millions. Yes. For a dance studio? Renji looked at the man who asked, for my signature. That ended the discussion. He signed the withdrawal. The financial penalty was substantial. 2 future property partnerships were suspended before he left the building. Masato remained behind. Renji stopped at the door. You'll keep your position in the organization. Masato looked surprised. But you will never control another legitimate property transaction under my name. For the first time, Masato seemed genuinely shaken. Renji did not need to destroy him. Removing the authority he had abused was enough. 2 days later, Amara received written confirmation that the immediate clearance could not proceed while her tenant challenge remained valid. Hours after that, news arrived that Kurose property had withdrawn entirely. The redevelopment collapsed without its largest financial participant. The studio would remain. Amara sat alone at the reception desk when Renji entered. She looked exhausted. You lost the deal. Yes. For me. Renji considered the question. No. Her eyes narrowed. I lost it because I allowed someone to use my authority to erase your choice. That answer affected her more than him saying he loved her would have. He placed the original tenant file on the desk. No envelope, no replacement lease, no gift. You were right from the beginning. About what? I thought owning the building meant I understood what belonged to me. Amara looked at the brass key hanging from its red cord. And now? Now I know the difference. She was quiet for several seconds. Renji did not step closer. Finally, she said, I need time. Every instinct that had built his life wanted to ask how much. A day, a week, a month. Instead, he nodded. All right. Then he left the studio without asking for the key and without asking when he could return. He left without knowing whether she would ever invite him back. The first week without Renji felt quieter than Amara expected. Not peaceful, just quieter. The studio survived, but survival did not erase what had happened. 2 potential partners never returned. One instructor admitted she had considered leaving when the photograph spread. A few students stopped coming without explanation. Others stayed. The Thursday class filled every mat. The cracked mirror was still cracked. The speaker still needed tape. And every night, Amara locked the door with the same old brass key. She had spent years believing independence meant never needing anyone. Then Renji had shown her another danger. Someone could respect her strength and still make decisions for her because he believed he knew how to protect it. The difference was that he had listened when she told him to stop. That mattered. Across the city, Renji dealt with consequences of his own. The redevelopment loss was expensive, but the money was easier than the questions. 2 business partners suspended future negotiations. Others wanted reassurance that his personal judgment had not become unreliable. Masato remained inside the broader organization, but the property division was closed to him. The punishment was not dramatic. He simply no longer sat in the rooms where legitimate investments were decided. For a man who had built his importance around access, That was enough. Renji did not visit Amara. He did not send flowers. He did not arrange repairs anonymously. He did not ask anyone to monitor the studio. Every one of those choices required effort. On the 9th evening, Amara finished the final class alone. She switched off the music and began wiping the floor. A student had brought cake earlier, leaving half of it in the small refrigerator. Amara cut herself a piece, sat behind the reception desk, and looked at the empty chair across from her. She remembered the terrible instant coffee. She remembered Renji drinking it, without complaint, because she had offered it. Her phone was beside her hand. She could call him. She did not. Not yet. 3 days later, she saw him through the glass. Renji stood across the street beneath the light of a convenience store sign. No car waiting beside him, no men nearby, no envelope. He was simply there. Amara watched for nearly a minute. He never approached the door. Eventually, she crossed the studio. Renji noticed her when she reached the glass. He stayed where he was. Amara unlocked the door. You've been standing there long? 7 minutes. You counted. I usually know how long I've been waiting. She leaned against the frame. That sounds like control again. Probably. A small smile appeared on his face. He did not cross the threshold. Amara noticed immediately. You're not coming in? You asked for time. I opened the door. That isn't the same as asking me inside. She stared at him. There it was. The change she had needed to see. Not a speech. Not an apology repeated until it became meaningless. A boundary remembered when nobody was forcing him to remember it. Amara reached into the pocket of her jacket. The brass key rested in her palm. Renji recognized it. She stepped closer and placed it in his hand. His fingers closed around the worn metal. For the first time since they had met, he looked genuinely uncertain. What are you doing? Giving you a key. You told me this one was yours. It still is. Renji looked down at it. Then why give it to me? Because taking something and being given something are different. He understood what she meant immediately. His eyes returned to hers. Amara, you came here the first time because you thought everything had a price. Yes. Then you tried to protect me by solving things I didn't ask you to solve. Yes. And when I told you to leave me alone, you actually did. That was harder than losing the redevelopment. She laughed softly. I believe that. Renji held the key between them. If I take this, what does it mean? It means you can come in. That's all? For now. He nodded. Then he waited. Amara stepped backward. Renji. Yes? You can come in. Only then did he cross the threshold. The studio looked exactly as it had before. The same worn floor. The same handwritten schedule. The same damaged speaker. Renji glanced toward the mirror. You still haven't repaired that. I had other expenses. He looked at her. Amara raised one finger. Careful. I wasn't offering. Good. I was going to ask if you wanted help finding someone. That's different. I'm learning. She walked toward the reception desk. Coffee? Renji looked toward the small kettle. The terrible one? The terrible one? Yes. They stood beside each other while the water heated. There was no crisis left to discuss. No property agreement, no Masato, no investor pressure. That made the silence harder than any negotiation he'd had. Renji finally spoke. I don't know what this will be. Neither do I. I can't promise my life will ever be simple. I'm not asking for simple. He looked at her. What are you asking for? Amara considered it. Choice. Renji nodded once. Then choose. She did. She stepped closer and kissed him. It was brief, deliberate, and entirely hers. When she pulled away, Renji did not reach for her immediately. Amara smiled. You can touch me. His hand settled gently at her waist, not claiming, asking again in the way he held her. She stayed. Later, they sat on the studio floor. 2 paper cups of coffee sat between them. Renji had placed the brass key beside his cup instead of in his pocket. Amara noticed. You're not taking it home. Not tonight. Why? You gave me access. He looked at the key. You didn't give me ownership. Amara leaned her shoulder against his. Maybe you are learning? Outside, people passed without knowing who sat behind the glass. Inside, nothing had been completely fixed. The mirror still bore its crack. Renji still carried the consequences of the choices he had made. Amara still had a business to rebuild. But neither was trying to make the other easier to manage. Sometimes love begins when power learns to wait for permission. Subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what you think really changed them.